everything seems nice and cozy and it's working, but after a while you go, this is kind of boring.
Yeah.
Like life is supposed to be a little bit more of a thrill ride than this. And the truth is some of us miss out, especially around the quarter life, because um, we just might be afraid to like rock the boat a little bit. And I think that there is a healthy way to examine our beliefs in a way that's not destructive. And I would advocate that people should do that, before they consider like the next 10, 15, 20 years of their life. Hey, before you kind of go on a course that's going to ultimately end in shipwreck, maybe you should just take some time to kind of map out, again, where am I as a person? Who am I as a person? And let that kind of be the start of you embracing this journey of working through some of the things that you have inherited.
Yeah, and it's wearing a mask, right? It's wearing a mask over who you truly are, right? And I think the result of doing that is, I think a fairly common or relatable example is people that retire, at 65, whatever, worked for 40 years, and they look back on it and it's like, what did I spend most of my life just trying to accomplish? What problem did I just help solve? And I think if you kind of sit back and you're like, well, I don't know, like I it didn't really hit home with me. It was just this thing that I did. It's not to say that that's right or wrong, but you should consciously be making that choice, right? And it also reminds me of this story about these two kids that grow up with an alcoholic father, and one of them uh, becomes an alcoholic. He says, "Yeah, Dad was an alcoholic. Obviously, I became an alcoholic too." And the other one chooses to be sober because Dad was an alcoholic. Obviously, I'm not going to be an alcoholic. And it kind of breaks your brain a little bit, but it's exactly what we're talking about. It's being on autopilot. It's the same. They grew up in the same environment, right? And it's the fact that we do get to choose our beliefs as well. And I think that that's like that childhood trauma that ties into all of this in a chaotic way, right? But I like that story because it does kind of visualize this thing a little bit better.
Yeah, yeah, and I think too, on the other side of just being on autopilot is you tend to, yeah, you tend to chase after things because again you are in pursuit of what you were told to pursue. So that's even things that can be good, right? Like you're looking for affirmation, you're looking for comfort, you're looking for success, and those things aren't wrong in and of themselves. But the reality is that if you make that your central focus, the truth is that becomes a prison, that you start to realize I can't function unless I receive the approval of my parents, the person that I'm dating or married to. If I don't, receive the approval of my boss or people around me, you realize very quickly that you've kind of set yourself up to just get hurt because you're chasing things that you were never meant to chase in and of themselves, because those things are not the things that ultimately are meant to bring you fulfillment and happiness, that especially for somebody who's in the quarter stage of their life, they're thinking about. They're thinking about, man, I want to just live a life that is impactful, fulfilling, happy. I want to make sure that my life means something. And the truth is that, we got to understand what's gonna make or break that for me. And so again, it is revisiting this idea of, man, what do I believe in, and why do I believe this, and what's the hope moving forward in the midst of this confusion? Because you start to feel, if you're on autopilot, this low grade confusion. You start to feel this sense of aimlessness. You start to feel this sense of I just don't know where to go. And I think that's probably the mantra of the quarter lifer, where they go, I just kind of feel stuck. And so, you know, you got to make sure we got to be willing to have this conversation. And props to you for trying to bring the encouragement and kind of encourage people to say, hey, we don't have to simply take what's been fed to us. We Let's stop, let's pause, let's have a conversation around this. Let's share each other's stories so that we can realize I'm not alone in this. And now how do we work our way through this? Like you've said before, like it's not me, it's us, it's we that it can be done. But somebody's got to be willing to say, "Hold up." Like in the Matrix. Somebody's got to be willing to say, "Hold on. Something is going on here that we need to kind of hit the pause button and figure out because what we've been given might not be true."
I remember sitting in my old engineering job, just going through the motions, autopilot, living for the weekend, kind of knowing that this is weird. This isn't right what I thought it'd be. And, you know, eventually obviously decided to quit and leave there and take this risk. And I remember in the midst of all that contemplating, like, what do I do? Right? I'm kind of stuck. Do I do this kind of crazy, risky thing or do I stay here? Right. And I remember thinking, like, you look around at work and it's like, and just with your friends and everything, it's like, is everyone feeling this too, kind of? But no one's doing about it. Am I crazy?
Right.
And I remember having a moment with myself where it was like, I don't care. I don't care what everyone else is doing, what they think about this. I could be so wrong that there is another way, that I'm not crazy. But I need to find out. I need to figure this out for myself because, right, we have this one life. Like I want it to be as great as it can be. And where I'm at right now doesn't really align with my view of greatness in the gifts that I've been given and the purpose that I feel called to pursue. And it's hard being in that place, but now being on the other side of it, it's like, how do you almost not see it? But when you're in it, it's so hard to recognize those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Just two things just to speak to that, right? Like there is something powerful about the shared experience that when you realize I'm not alone, that it makes it somehow not better, but bearable. It makes it in a way that you're like, okay, I can move forward because now somebody understands. And that's the hope that I know you're trying to build out with quarter life clarity. But then also too, you know, if you only operate on autopilot, the truth of the matter is that you're gonna just end up settling. Because to your point, you have gifts, you have opportunities that you got to be willing to explore to be able to really live life to the fullest. And the reality is, if you're just on autopilot, you might think you're not settling, but you are because you're just taking what's been given to you rather than, you know what, being a little bit of a pioneer and saying, I'm going to try to look at this a different way. And the reality is that no quarter lifer wants to right now would say, yeah, I want a life that I just settle in. And I would say, okay, well, start with the hard conversation about examining your own beliefs because until you do that, you're just going to settle. But if you're willing to do this hard work, this deep inner work, the reality is that you can step into something that is much more fulfilling, like you're mentioning.
Yeah. So on that, how do we do that, right? How do we start to break the process of I've just believed this forever? Like, how do we wake up to what we actually believe? How do we audit those beliefs and just make sense of kind of everything that we're talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. I think in order for us to like really wake up to what we believe, you kind of almost got to take the posture of like a child, right? Like kids are known for being infamous or they're like known for always asking the question why. Like I know when I was younger, like I drove my parents crazy because on every little thing I'm asking the question, well, why? Why? Like Who said it has to be this way? Who told us that we have to do this?
Right.
The reality is, I think you just got to ask why. Like everything that you do, everything you say, everything that your the system in which you're operating from, you got to ask like, well, why? Like, how did we get here? Why do I do this? Why did I take this job? Why did I go to that college? Why did I major in this? Why did I not pursue that relationship? Why am I afraid to have this conversation? You just have to ask yourself why on almost everything. And again, not in a destructive way, right? Like this is the process that I'm talking about is not one that leads to like despair, but it's one that ultimately leads to like hope and freedom. But it starts with the idea of like that that posture of a kid. Why? Why am I doing what I'm doing?
Yeah, and I bet the response of you saying why to your parents is probably because I said so, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the truth is that like I think sometimes to what we said earlier, like we settled for that.
Yeah.
We just said okay rather than really pushing. And again, there's some times where you push and you ask this question that can be hurtful and destructive to the people around you and to your own internal person, right? Your own soul. But there is a way to do this that I think is healthy, and I think too, with that, like it's remembering that this is not something that happens overnight, right? Like you don't wake up to what you believe like immediately. It's a gradual enlightenment, so to speak. It's like the sunrise. Like it takes time for you to realize, like, oh my gosh, this is the way I've been operating without realizing it. It's not going to be just a light switch that goes on.